Well, as I'm sure you all know, HS2 is the planned high-speed railway line between London and the north of England. Phase 1 will run from London to Birmingham and was originally due to be completed in 2026. Phase 2 will run from Birmingham to Manchester and Leeds and was due to be completed in 2033. Phase 2A is the link will run from West Midlands to Crewe, and Phase 2B extends the route to Manchester and Leeds. After several delays, it was announced last year that initial services would start from Old Oak Common, not Euston, and that they would start in 2029 at the earliest. Services wouldn't start from Euston until at least 2031, and possibly 10 years later than first planned. Scheduled ranges for Phase 2 have yet to be established, although Phase 2A of the project was given royal assent in February. You will see that specific dates are no longer given, but an expected window is used instead. These windows are rather large, to say the least, but they do give HS2 more scope to say that the project was delivered on time. In 2011, the cost was estimated at £33 billion. This gradually increased to £88 billion, making it by far the most expensive railway ever built. The government was so concerned about the spiralling cost that they commissioned a review into the whole scheme, chaired by Douglas Oakerby, himself a former chairman of HS2. According to this review, there is a considerable risk that the cost could rise to £106 billion. The stark truth is that it is impossible to know exactly what that final figure will be. The spend on HS2 up to March this year was £11 billion, over 25% of the total budget for Phase 1. It's also been reported recently that COVID-related delays and reduced productivity have increased costs by £1.7 billion. Trains will eventually leave a massively redeveloped Euston station in a tunnel. There will be 11 platforms, or perhaps 10, it hasn't been decided yet, each a quarter of a mile long. The only station between Euston and Birmingham will be an interchange at Old Oak Common in West London. The first 6.6 miles, the tunnel from Euston to Old Oak Common, will cost more than £8 billion, just under half the expected total cost of Crossrail. This is an artist's impression of what it might look like, and it will be the largest station ever built in the UK. At the end of June, the first train carrying spoil removed from the construction works left the HS2 logistics hub in Wealdstone. Carrying nearly 1,500 tonnes of spoil, the train travelled to Cambridgeshire, where the spoil will be reused in a disused quarry to bring it back into use as a new housing development. It's planned that up to 7 freight trains a day will leave the hub and will remove millions of journeys from the roads in the London area alone. In addition, 1 train per day will arrive at the hub bringing in construction materials. A conveyor system will eventually remove the spoil from the construction of Old Oak Common Station and transport it straight to the logistics hub. And that's due to be in operation by spring of next year. The route then continues in a tunnel. 6 tunnel boring machines, TBMs as they're referred to, will bore the 2 13-mile-long tunnels. They will start in the middle of next year and take about 2 years to dig the tunnels. The route eventually emerges from the tunnel opposite West Ruislip Station and then continues along the existing Chiltern railway line. That's the branch of the Chiltern line that goes through High Wycombe rather than the one that comes through Amersham and onto Aylesbury. Ruislip Golf Course is the first of several courses along the route that will all be impacted. The route crosses the Crone Valley Regional Park near Denham on a viaduct over 2 miles long and up to 10 meters high, with trains traveling at 200 miles an hour. It will be the longest viaduct in the country by some distance and the most significant visible engineering feature on the whole of the phase 1 of the route. This is an artist's impression of what the viaduct will look like. It will have 57 spans and weigh 116,000 tons. That's 116,000 tons of material that will all have to come in around the M25. The spans and pier forms vary along the length, reflecting the changing landscape of the Colne Valley. Where the viaduct crosses lakes, the slender arcs will preserve the landscape views across the water. Elsewhere through woodland, the spans are shorter and the piers more conventional. There is no doubt that a lot of work has gone into the design, but alas, it is still a blooming great viaduct that goes right across the middle of the Colne Valley Regional Park. A noise barrier will be incorporated to reduce the spread of noise. This will be topped with 2-meter high self-cleaning acrylic panels to give passengers some sort of a fleeting view. We presume that the 2 viaducts in the Chilterns will have a similar design. The viaduct passes directly over the Hillingdon Outdoor Activity Centre. This is the first of 11 lakes and reservoirs that HS2 will cross on its way to Birmingham. The future of this centre, alas, is still uncertain. It then crosses the Grand Union Canal just south of the Airfield Marina, the first of 12 canals to be crossed. The towpath here will remain open throughout the construction period. It then goes over Savay Lake, one of the premier carp fishing lakes in the United Kingdom. Then over Moor Hall Road, and this will be one of the access points to the Hall Road I will mention a little bit later. Then enters the Broadwater Lake Reserve, the first of 160 wildlife sites that are threatened along the proposed route. And this is the River Colne, just one of 112 rivers the route will cross. We're now looking south along the viaduct route, and you can see all of the features that we've just mentioned. The River Colne, you can see it, all the trees have been removed, and the picture was taken just above where it says the River Colne sign. A temporary haul road is being constructed along the length of the viaduct in order to minimise highway traffic, and this haul road is due to be completed by October. The viaduct will cross the lake on a series of temporary jetties. The haul road will cross the lake with a series of temporary jetties. These will also be used for the construction of the Viaduct Piers. 292 board piles will be required to support the piers and abutments, and these will be up to 55 metres deep. The viaduct then passes over the A412, the North Orbital Road, and continues in a cutting across what was farmland towards the M25. Denham Water Ski Club has had to build a new clubhouse across the other side of the lake. This is looking north from that new clubhouse towards the viaduct, which will go right across the top of the picture. Sadly, it's no longer a secluded lake, as most of the trees along the A412 have been removed. It will eventually be dominated by the viaduct. This is the North Orbital Road looking east towards Maple Cross as work gets underway. So the Denham Water Ski Club is the other side of those trees there. And this is the reality. One of the things which I've mentioned before that I just was not prepared for when I was taking the pictures and imagining what it would look like is the wholesale tree removal and how devastating it is. So this is looking north, and this is the old entrance going down to the Water Ski Club. That's now been closed off and the entrance moved further along the road. This is looking back, looking south across the A412 along the viaduct, along the line of the viaduct. And again, it's stunning just how many trees have been destroyed. This is looking in the opposite direction, looking north to what will be the West Hyde embankment and the start of the viaduct. Construction of the viaduct will start in the autumn, with the deck being added next spring. It is due to be completed by the summer of 2024. The viaduct, the route leaves the viaduct on the newly constructed embankment and then enters the Tilehouse Lane cutting, which will be up to 30 metres deep. Tilehouse Lane will cross over the route on a bridge. The lane is now closed and will remain closed until the autumn for the construction of the bridge. So you can see there the original Tilehouse Lane, and the bridge is now in place, has been constructed, and eventually Tilehouse Lane, when it reopens, will be redirected over the bridge and then back along to the left-hand side of the picture, where it will join its original route. This was the open farmland that the route crosses on its way towards the Chiltern Tunnel South Portal. Portal is the entry or exit to a tunnel. Construction compounds here are linked directly to the M25 by two temporary access roads, and spoil extracted from the Chiltern Tunnel will be dispersed here across the Western Valley slopes, which you can see on the left-hand side of the picture. There will only be two compounds providing overnight accommodation across the Chilterns, and this is the first of them. And it will provide accommodation for between 150 and 250 workers for 5.5 years. And that is being used at the moment. So there is overnight accommodation in use now. The compound covers 136 acres. Apart from extensive office accommodation, there are a number of factories and storage facilities, as well as a visitors centre, which, because of the pandemic, isn't open at the moment, but presumably that will be open to visitors at some stage later in the year. The first building you can see here is the Viaduct segment precast factory. Then the one in the middle is the tunnel lining segment precast factory, and the slurry treatment plant at the back. The slurry treatment plant is huge, and it's said to be the largest such facility in the world. 3 million cubic meters of spoil will be removed and treated here before being used for local landscaping. Two tunnel boring machines have been specifically designed for the mix of chalk and flint that they will encounter under the Chilterns. And this does give you an idea of the size of these machines. They are enormous. The first began tunnelling in the middle of May, and they are expected to take around 3 years to excavate the 9 metre diameter tunnels, cutting around 15 metres each day. Each will have a crew of 17 people. This shows the start of the tunnel on the left. You can see that's the first of the concrete lining segments. We're now inside the tunnelling shield, which uses the same principle as Brunel used all those years ago, but a sophisticated boring machine now instead of human labour that was used by Brunel. The spoil will be mixed with water to form a slurry, which will be pumped back to the treatment plant that we just talked about. They will use 6.5 million litres of water per day, which was quite frightening. But we're reassured that only 1.7 million litres of that will be fresh water. The rest will be a mixture of recycled water from the slurry treatment plant and grey water collected from all the hard surfaces and roofs on site. The tunnels, as I said, will be lined with concrete as they go, 7 segments in each section, each weighing up to 8 tonnes. 196 segments a day will be produced on site, where they are stored for 28 days to cure. Apparently, each one has its own unique identifying barcode, and this shows this huge robotic arm lifting the segment and putting it into place. The second TBM was launched at the end of June. It will use geological data from the first one, allowing it to move slightly faster and eventually to catch it up. This is an impression of what the tunnel portal will look like. The N25 is shown at the top, and construction will be complete by the summer of 2025. This shows the two temporary slip roads. So all the material, all the HGVs are now use the M25, the two slip roads. These are between junction 16 and 17, between the M40 and Rickmansworth. And this is looking back. This is how it was when I first started taking pictures. So that is now the construction compound, which we've just been looking at. When I first went there, it was a field of barley. And this, incidentally, is the only section of the route in Hertfordshire. The route enters the 10.6 mile long twin bore tunnel, passing under the M25. There will be cross passages between the tunnels every 320 metres, 40 in total. Altogether, HS2 will dig 64 miles of tunnels between London and the West Midlands, but this will be by far the longest and the deepest. Trains will only take 90 seconds to travel from the exit of the London Tunnel at West Ruislip to the entrance of the Chiltern Tunnel here. This is the section we're now going to be looking at, the two crosses. The one on the right marks the entrance, the tunnel portal alongside the M25, and we'll be covering this section all the way across the Chilterns as far as Wendover. This shows the 4 ventilation shafts across the Chilterns. There will also be an intervention shaft near the North Tunnel portal at South Heath. These will be used for emergency access during operation of the railway. The tunnels will be up to 90 metres deep, and the deepest will be just beyond Gore Hill, just before it gets to the Amersham vent shaft. The A413, which I mentioned, is the main road passing the Chalfonts and Amersham, then on to Great Missenden and Wendover. The first of these vent shafts will be in Chesham Lane, Chalfont St Peter. The tunnel depth here will be 63 metres. Site perimeters, and this applies to all of the vent shafts, will generally be fenced with 2.4 high metre solid hoardings and usually painted green. Some, like the one being constructed, will be up to 3.6 metres high to control construction noise. Just a quick description of the principle of how the vent shafts are made. Put simply, a cylindrical hole is cut as if with a huge pastry cutter, then filled with concrete, creating the diaphragm wall. The spoil is then removed, creating the shaft with a base added in preparation for the arrival of the TBMs. And finally, a head house building is built over the top of the shaft. This is the cutter for the diaphragm wall. This was taken some time ago because that has now been complete. And most of the equipment there that was visible has now been moved to other vent shafts further along the line. The next stage, which is where they are now, is the excavation of the shaft, the removal of the spoil in the middle of the shaft. That has started and is due to be finished in September. The TBMs are due to reach here next year, around February or March. This is an artist's impression of what the head house will look like. The design was decided after consultation with relevant bodies and will look like a farm building in a rural location. A 400-metre long temporary haul road links the site directly to the 413. And those of you who've been along the road will be familiar with the increasing number of traffic lights that are appearing. The haul road will be in operation until the vent shaft is completed in early 2025. It will then be removed and the land will be restored to its former use. The tunnel then passes under the River Misbourne for the first time in the centre of Chalfont St Giles. Extensive ground investigations have shown that there are approximately 50 faults in the chalk along the tunnel route. There are serious concerns that this very rare and valuable chalk stream could be lost forever. There are only 240 chalk streams on the planet, and of these, the chalk streams that flow through the Chilterns are widely regarded as the most threatened of all. Chalfont St Giles vent shaft will be situated in Bottomhouse Farm Lane. The road is now closed as a through route, alas to all traffic, including walkers and cyclists. This is looking back to the east, down towards the 413, gives you an idea exactly where it is. I don't think people can envisage where it is because it's a Bottomhouse Farm Lane. Unless you want to visit Bottomhouse Farm, it's not the sort of road that you would drive along. Again, access to this vent shaft will be via a temporary haul road, which is now finished and in use, and it will runs alongside Bottomhouse Farm Lane. The lane has now been stopped up completely and access is now
Keith, it might be worthwhile turning your own video off where you've frozen.
Do you want me to stop screen sharing?
You're fine now, Keith. I've just turned your video off.
Okay. Right. So the access route for this side is along the 413 to the A40 at Gerrard's Cross and then to the M40. HGVs are not permitted to turn left from the haul road. This is looking back along Bottomhouse Farm Lane before construction of the haul road. And this is as it is now. Alas, as you can see, the houses in Bottomhouse Farm Lane have lost their view down the Misbourne Valley. And this is looking along the haul road, and you can see the houses that I was just mentioning on the right-hand side. The haul road crosses the Misbourne on a newly constructed bridge. There are concerns that the foundations will have damaged the riverbank. The wet winter has caused flooding along this stretch of the river. It's hard to imagine that in 2018 the river here was dry. The contractors responsible for construction of the haul road and the Environment Agency have agreed to repair the riverbanks adjacent to the bridge as a temporary measure to reduce the likelihood of flooding. Unfortunately, a full riverbank reinstatement would not be possible until the bridge is removed, which will be 2026 at the earliest. So this is looking across the newly constructed bridge. And looking back, this is the lane as it was, the South Bucks Way, which will be familiar with all of you who like walking, crosses the Bottomhouse Farm Lane. This is as it was, and this is as it is now. The haul road is on the right. And looking back, and this is where the South Bucks Way now crosses the haul road. A large drain has been installed alongside the lane, which runs all the way up to the top of the lane. The lane is going to be widened. They have permission to do it, and work will get underway very soon. It will still be single track with passing places. Alas, the lane has been closed for several months and will probably remain so until the work is finished towards the end of the year. Looking west along the Hall Road from the South Bucks Way, and that's as it is now. You can see traffic that wants to get into Bottomhouse Farm Lane uses the Hall Road, and then there's a little link road you can see which takes you into Bottomhouse Farm Lane on the right. The lane passes very close to the farm, Upper Bottomhouse Farm. Chiltern Valley Equestrian Centre Menage can be seen in the foreground. Alas, the centre was forced to close and to relocate. It was then demolished to make way for the Hall Road, and this is the Hall Road more or less as it is now. It then continues passing very close to the residential section of the farm. It looks greener now because the farmer has put some grass down there, so it looks a bit better when it's green. And then this is how the lane continued to the right of the hedgerow with the Hall Road on the left. Alas, not only was the hedge removed, but the lane was removed as well. This was classified as an important hedgerow. This means that it was supposed to be protected. Alas, it didn't stop its removal. So we're now looking north across towards the vent shaft, and Bottomhouse Farm Lane is travelling across the middle of the picture. And looking across the lane to the vent shaft, very popular with walkers, and especially nearly every time you go out, you see youngsters at the weekend doing their Duke of Edinburgh award. Well, unfortunately, they've had to find somewhere else to walk because pedestrians are no longer permitted to use this section of the lane. Tunnel depth here is 32 metres, and the site will also house an auto transformer station. The diaphragm walling has been completed and the equipment moved to other shafts in the same way that it has been moved from Chalfont St Peter. The TBMs are due to reach here in the summer, August, September of next year. The work will be finished by January of 2025, and then the Hall Road will be removed and the land reinstated. The Amersham vent shaft will be situated in Bowwood Lane, west of Amersham Hospital. The A404 goes to Wickham, and the A413 turns right towards Great Missenden. So this gives you an idea of where we're looking at. The Chilterns Crematorium is just off the picture at the top, which is actually Britain's busiest, with over 4,000 funerals a year. Tunnel depth here will be 40 metres, and all the shafts will have permanent areas of hard standing for emergency and service vehicles. This is looking west along the site, the A404, just the other side of the barrier on the right-hand side. This was the last time I was able to take aerial pictures in April, and this is what it looked like then, but there's an awful lot more equipment there now. The diaphragm walling has started, so there's a lot of concrete pouring going on, a lot of HGVs using the site, and that's due to be finished by August. All the concrete comes from the batching plant at the South Tunnel Portal. It's supposed to come around the M25, up the M40 to Beaconsfield, and then down the A355. But we have a constant problem with lorries that do not stick to the approved route, and it's something that is annoying a lot of people locally. I understand that it is a problem for the contractors to enforce, but it's something that we are very concerned about. At least they will have their wheels washed before they leave the site. So over the coming weeks, one lane of Bowwood Lane will be closed. So today, it started yesterday, while the hoardings are painted. You can see the hoardings on the right-hand side, and they're going to be painted with scenes depicting the local history. The A404 will also be closed overnight. I'm not sure how many times, to remove the current hoarding and to put a new barrier in place. So you can see all the equipment, some of which would have come from Chalfont St Giles or Chalfont St Peter vent shaft. Again, this is the diaphragm wall cutter, and the tunnel boring machines should reach here in January, February 2023, with the vent shaft due to be completed in April 2025. So there's a lot of work going on there at the moment. HS2 have been consulting on the head house design. Their proposal is for a circular single-storey building surrounded by a spiral weathered steel wall with fins on the top and even lighting to illuminate it at night, and preserved sight lines so that you can't miss it. Needless to say, these plans are not so popular, to say the least. We've let them know they consulted, and we still await development. So what the final design will be, we don't know. It's not due to be constructed until July 2023, so another couple of years before they start constructing it. The tunnel passes then between the 18th century Shardlow's house and Shardlow's lake, and then under the Misbourne for the second time. The fourth vent shaft will be alongside the 413 in Little Missenden. You can see it here with the site along the dual carriageway. You'll be only too well aware of it because it's very obvious where it is now. One of the HGVs supplying materials further along the line just coming past. So these are the dreaded lorries that seem to find their own way back to the batching plant at the South Tunnel portal. One lane of the southbound carriageway will be closed for much of the construction period. Tunnel depth is 31 metres and the TBMs will reach here in July, August, 2 years' time. One lane of the 413 will be closed for much of the construction period, as I've said. And access to the site will be via a traffic light controlled right-hand turn across the dual carriageway. This will save a round trip of about 5 miles, because at the moment traffic has to go all the way up to the Frith Hill roundabout and then come back again to turn into the vent shaft. So the road was closed for the weekend in June for the work on the utilities, and traffic lights are due to be installed in September. This is an idea of what the head house will look like. And I think once the planting is done, you won't even be able to see it. The Chesham Road intervention shaft will be situated near the former Annie Bailey's. As it will be an intervention shaft only, it will not have any fans. So in more ways than one. We're looking north here towards South Heath, so across the 485, the Chesham Road. Construction compound is now being completed or constructed. I'm sorry, I'll say that again. The construction compound is now being constructed, yes. And excavation of the site is due to start in November, so the work proper. One public right-of-way has been diverted here around the spoil storage site before it will be reinstated along its original route once the work is finished. So this gives you an idea of what it looks like from the air. TBMs are due to reach here at the end of 2023, with work due to finish in April 2025. The North Tunnel portal will be situated just beyond Frith Hill in South Heath. And here we are looking east, so across the 413 towards South Heath. The TBMs are due to finish here in early 2024. They will then be dismantled and scrapped. We're now looking at west across the portal. Beyond the tunnel, the cutting will be 16 metres deep, and there will be permanent access to the portal from Frith Hill. One footpath is now closed until the summer of 2025. That's GM13, and it will be reinstated over the tunnel portal. GMI 12 is now closed and will be for a further year when it will be reinstated over its own overbridge. Another access road, temporary access road or haul road, 740 metres long, links the construction compound to the A413 at the Great Missenden Link Road roundabout. This will allow also be used for access to subsequent compounds via a temporary haul road, which will be constructed along the route known as the Yellow Brick Road, thus removing large numbers of HGVs from local roads. There will actually be two roads, with one for the massive earth moving equipment and the other for the rest of the traffic. The last section of the tunnel is through a layer of clay, which would not be able to support it. 96 piles will be constructed using rigs like this. Construction of these piles is due to begin the beginning of next year. So January to August next year, these will be put in place. The portal itself is due to be completed in May of 2025. The route continues in a cutting under a series of newly constructed bridges between Great Missenden and Wendover. The first of these will be in Leather Lane. Sadly, the decision to put the bridge to the south of the lane will mean the loss of many large oak trees. Contractors are currently working on the design in order to keep the numbers lost to a minimum. They will use offline construction, which means that the bridge will be constructed off the line of Leather Lane, so the Leather Lane doesn't have to be closed, and once completed, Leather Lane will be diverted over this new bridge. A number of trees have already been removed, and this made the TV news on several occasions back in March. This was just for the temporary haul road. A much wider swathe will be needed for the railway itself. The road is due to be closed later on in the month from the 19th to the 30th, but only during the day from 6 till 6 for tree removal where the route crosses the lane and the installation of traffic signalling. This is an artist's impression of what all the bridges will look like. The next bridge will be the Cottage Farm overbridge, which goes from Hunts Green Farm down to Grim's Ditch. And you can see Grim's Ditch on the picture there. And this is a view looking across what will be the bridge towards Grim's Ditch, which is an Iron Age earthwork. All the trees have now been removed here in preparation for the archaeological survey work, which is being undertaken at the moment. So extensive work going on there, originally delayed somewhat because of the weather. 150 trial trenches are being dug here, and the work is expected to continue until the end of the year. And Grim's Ditch will then be destroyed by the cutting coming through for the railway. But you can see just how extensive the little trial trenches have been. The route then passes under footpath TLE2, which is now closed until the autumn of 2026, when it will cross the route on its own overbridge. You can see that's the overbridge on the right-hand side of the picture. We then move on to Bowwood Lane, which is the next overbridge. This is looking south across the lane, and the footpath overbridge that we just talked about will be the other side of the hedge you can see in the gap through the trees. You can see the trees of Grim's Ditch, but alas, they've gone. That's before their removal. Bowwood Lane is now closed until the 16th for the installation of traffic signalling for the Hall Road crossing. So this is where the Hall Road will cross. The public right-of-way, which runs alongside the lane, remains open. which is just as well, because this is important as is the diversion route for several other footpaths which have been closed until the construction is completed. We've been working with the contractors to ensure that these diversions are properly signposted. The hope is that these signs will, with Chiltern Society branding, will remain in place and not be vandalised. Thanks to Jim Conboy and Andrew Clark, among others, for all their work in making this happen, and also to the contractors, EKFB, for their cooperation, is much appreciated. An ancient woodland is by definition over 400 years old. Jones Hill Wood is an ancient woodland. Apparently, Roald Dahl was a regular visitor to this wood, and it is said it inspired him to write Fantastic Mr. Fox. In an instant, a large swathe of it has been destroyed to make way for a viaduct. There's even more than was shown in this aerial picture, because the corner has been cut off as well. There is a large area of new tree planting at the top of Bowwood Lane and the corner with King's Lane. However, HS2 do acknowledge that they cannot replace the ancient woodland that they have destroyed. Wendover Dean Viaduct will then take the route over Durham Farm. This is the last days of Durham Farm, awaiting its fate. And now it's gone. Demolition is stopped while asbestos is removed from the one remaining barn. Alternative routes, which I've mentioned for 3 public rights of way, will be required for 5 years here. And one of these is the Chiltern Way, the very popular Chiltern Way, which will eventually pass right under the viaduct here. It's hard to imagine that where we're standing here, trains will be travelling overhead at 250 miles an hour and up to 55 feet in the air. And this is looking south back along the viaduct route towards Durham Farm and Jones Hill Wood, again before all the trees have been removed. The route then descends to Wendover across more open farmland. To the next bridge, Rocky Lane Bridge. This will be an underbridge 3 meters below the existing ground level, with HS2 passing above. All the others are over bridges. Again, offline construction will be used. So they will build the bridge to the left-hand side of the lane, and then the lane will be diverted over the bridge. More trees are being lost here, with a number already removed. Here we're looking back across the Hall Road, this crossing. So this is where it will cross, and we're looking down with the A413 at the end of the road. This road will be closed next month from the 2nd to the 20th of August for work on the crossing and for a culvert to be constructed. And traffic signalling will also be installed here in September. Now we're looking north. So this is from the crossing where the Hall Road crosses, and we're looking north towards Wendover along the route of the Hall Road. So Rocky Lane, in case you don't know where it is, that's the last road just before you get to the petrol station on the 413, just before you get to Wendover. Small Dean Viaduct will then take the route over the A413. The viaduct also crosses the Chiltern Railway Line and Small Dean Lane. The railway bridge here will have to be rebuilt. This is the other construction compound, which will provide overnight accommodation for between 170 and 240 people for nearly four years. So on the 413, we're looking to the right. This will be the Viaduct launch satellite compound. So this is where they will, the offices and the compound for the construction of the viaduct. There's some utility work going to be going on there before they can do that. The demolition of road-bound farm has been paused following an attack by protesters on contractors' staff. The tiles have now been removed. It looks a very sad building. The tiles have now been removed to stop bats roosting. We'll be under the viaduct here, so we're looking north towards Wendover. The Wendover Active Resistant Camp, otherwise known as the War Camp, is situated in the trees to the left of the road. So we're now the other side of those trees, and this is Smaldene Lane, looking south back along the viaduct route. The railway bridge, you can just see a train, and the railway bridge there, which was a public right-of-way, that is going to have to be removed. And now looking north along the route of the viaduct, and a large swathe of vegetation has now been cleared here. An artist's impression of the current design for the viaduct as it crosses the 413. The route then continues on an embankment up to 11 metres high alongside the Wendover bypass. So you can just see it. You've got the Chiltern railway line just above it, and the 413, the Wendover bypass, but just below. It then enters the cut and cover Wendover Green Tunnel alongside Backham Lane. This will be closed for 2 years, and a temporary link road, yet another temporary link road, will connect to the Ellsborough Road across the field. This is the extent of the tunnel, so you can see the north and the south portal. A green or cut and cover tunnel is where a trench is excavated and then roofed over, and the land on top is restored. So as opposed to a bored tunnel, this is what happens with a cut and cover tunnel. As you can see, there's been extensive archaeological survey work conducted here as well. So we're basically looking east across Wendover from the direction of Coombe Hill. There's been, and still ongoing, extensive ground investigations along this section. There are various concerns here about the stability of Backham Hill. It is geologically unstable, and also concerns about the water table and the water flows here, and the supply of water to the Wendover arm of the canal. Very serious concerns about that. Sadly, the Wendover Memorial Woodland will be devastated. A large section has now been cleared of the trees planted in memory of lost loved ones. Some badger sets will also be destroyed here. Their residents will have to find a new home. And alas, they're not the only ones losing their homes. 6 houses will be demolished in Ellsborough Road. So these are the houses, and we're looking west across what will be the Green Tunnel. And demolition of these properties is due to start later this year. Looking the other way, so this is the extent of the houses that will be demolished. Wendover Cricket Club will be demolished and will relocate to Holton at some stage. Ellsborough Road will be diverted behind the remaining houses for 2 years before being reinstated over the Green Tunnel. 7 public rights of way will be diverted along the ancient Ridgeway. The North Tunnel portal will be where Folly Bridge crosses the Wendover bypass. And this is looking looking west from that bridge, and you can just make out Coombe Hill at the top of the picture. This is here that archaeologists found a 4,000-year-old Bronze Age ceremonial site. The entrance aligns with the winter solstice. Important remains have been carefully removed and documented. This man could have lived as much as 2,500 years ago and may have been murdered or executed. The clay soil helped preserve his skeleton. The site has now been covered up in preparation for construction of the cutting. This overlay shows it will be directly under the track. The route then leaves the Chilterns and cuts a swathe across the Vale of Aylesbury on its way to Birmingham. The access route for construction compounds in this area is at the moment the A4010 through Princess Risborough, West Wickham and High Wycombe to the M40 at Handy Cross roundabout. HS2 now want to change this so that all the traffic from these compounds will travel back along the A413 to Amersham, round the Amersham bypass and then up Gore Hill and along the 355 to Beaconsfield. At the moment, Buckinghamshire Council have refused this application because of the lack of information regarding traffic volumes. The access route to compounds, as we said, as far as Wendover is back following the route we just talked about, the new link road has been built in Beaconsfield, supposedly linking the 355 directly to the A40 roundabout. At the moment, though, it's not known when or if this will be completed. So in the meantime, large volumes, very large volumes of construction traffic will have to negotiate the small roundabout at the junction with the A40. Construction working hours, 8 till 6 Monday to Friday, 8 till 1 on Saturday, tunnelling carried out around the clock. The contractors, the EKFB, have applied to extend the working hours from 7 in the morning to 7 at night along the route once they start doing the portal out and the haul road, installing the haul road. And sometimes there's overnight working when concrete pouring is involved. Operating hours for the trains, 5 to midnight Monday to Saturday, 8 to midnight Sunday. Overnight maintenance. Each train will carry up to 500 passengers. Facilities to construct join two trains together, carrying 1,100 passengers if they ever reach that number of passengers. From day one, there will be up to 14 trains in each direction per hour during peak periods, rising to 18 in the longer term. No other high-speed railway in the world has that volume of trains. As a comparison, the Bakerloo line on the London Underground runs 21 trains an hour in each direction, so just 3 trains an hour less than the Bakerloo line. A report from HS2 last year admitted that the project wouldn't reduce CO2 overall for more than 100 years, largely because of the emissions created during tunnelling construction. Up to 2050, the critical deadline for achieving nearly zero emissions, HS2 is a carbon burden on the country and doesn't save any carbon at all. HS2 is projected to use 67% of the electricity the entire rail network currently uses. It certainly isn't a green project. I'd just like to remind you about the HS2 photo diary on the Chiltern Society website. This is constantly updated with pictures at a number of locations across the Chilterns and the Colne Valley Park. So you can go in there and have a look and see what's happening at all of those locations. Right. Yeah, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Andy Cordiner, who's responsible for flying me up and down the route. Unfortunately, it's not been very easy lately. We've only made one flight this year, partly because of the weather and partly because of COVID. And I had hoped to fit in a quick trip recently, but the weather has not been helpful. And now the plane is being serviced, which I have to say is very important because I want to make sure it's properly serviced. So many thanks to Andy, because I think the aerial pictures do really help. And somebody else I would like to say a huge thank you to, and that's Andrea Paulden. She spends hours a day searching through the media for anything HS2 related. Her vital research means that we are all well informed about all aspects of this controversial project. At times it's not been easy for her, but she has kept the information coming. Thank you, Andrea. Your work is really much appreciated. The Chilterns covers 650 square miles of woodlands, hillside and valleys. The Chiltern Society, the only voluntary organisation dedicated to conserving and caring for this unique landscape. We have over 7,000 members and 500 volunteers. If you are not a member, then why don't you come and join us? You'd all be very welcome. Thank you very much. I'm now going to stop sharing the screen.